Good afternoon. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Jesse, and today we're going to talk about the seven gaps of literature view. So, what is research? The first question is that what is research gap? And as we all know, research gap is just something that remains to be done or learned in an area of research, and it's a gap in the knowledge of the researcher in the field of research, which is unexplored aspects in one's area of study that which is still not answered by research, or that body of knowledge that may still be lacking or undiscovered or not explored and void or leaving a vacuum which therefore raises certain questions to be answered by yet another research above what is already known concerning a phenomenon. So that was just a bit of information about the research gap, what it's all about. But gonna focus on the literature review and the seven gaps, whereby we have the seven gaps, which are the knowledge gap, the practical knowledge conflict gap, and the methodological gap, and the evidence gap. And the fifth one is the empirical gap. And then we have the theoretical gap and the population gap. So, okay, let's first of all, what's the importance of gaps in the literature review? So, as you all know, that gaps in the literature are missing pieces or insufficient information in the research literature. So these are areas that have scope for further research because they are unexplored or underexplored or outdated. So finding a research gap and having the means to develop a complete and sustained study on it can be very rewarding, as we all know. And every research project addresses or closes a knowledge gap. So research has to answer an existing question that may or may not have emanated from previous research. So, the purpose of conducting a research is mostly to close an existing research gap by providing a new body of knowledge, which is why it's very important for researchers to identify the research gaps in their area of interest. Okay, so this is just the importance of gaps of literature review. So now we're going to focus on more and go into details into the seven gaps of literature, as I mentioned them before. So I'm going to start with the evidence gap. So this evidence gap is just a study results which are inco- incongruent and do not support conclusion in their own right, if seen from more abstract perspective, or they are probably just caused by inconsistencies in previous research findings. So that's the evidence gap. So, and then from the evidence gap, let's proceed on to the knowledge gap. So the knowledge gap is a common gap in previous research, and there are two conditions in which a knowledge void might exist. So first, it is possible that the actual field lacks an understanding of the theories and literature from related research fields. And secondly, is that it's possible that a study finding are different from what was predicted. So, as we all know that there's two conditions in which a knowledge void might exist. As I said, the first one and the second one. So, yeah, that's now in the knowledge gap. So, proceeding to the practical conflict gap. Now, when it comes to the practical knowledge conflict gap, this kind of gap serves as a inspiration for new research in the field. And when an expert behaves differently than what they propose, or a practical knowledge conflict results in this situation. So mostly the purpose of the research might be to determine the scope of the conflict and its causes. So that's probably the practical knowledge conflict gap. So its aim is just to determine the scope of the conflict and its causes within the research gap. And now then we go to the empirical gap. Empirical gap, this is the kind of gap that addresses gaps in previous research, and this gap relates to study conclusions and claims that needs to be assessed or experimentally confirmed. So For instance, considers that, for example, maybe that no study has clearly attempted to examine a subject or topic from an empirical method and are frequently addressed by empirical gap. So that's mostly just about the empirical gap. And then proceeding on the theoretical gap, the type of gap known as theoretical gap is one that deals with the gaps between theory and earlier research. For instance, a gap conflict might exist if different theoretical models are being used to describe the same fact or phenomena, and much like a methodological gap conflict, and probably just used for instance, scholars could evaluate which of these theories is more superior in terms of the gap in the existing body of knowledge. So, when analyzing this, previous research on a phenomenon or fact, theoretical gaps are frequently used. So that's when theoretical gaps are used, when you are analyzing previous research or just facts. Then you can use these theoretical gaps. Now, going to the 11th slide, which talks about the methodological gap. A methodological gap is the kind of gap, as we all know, that addresses the contradiction that arises as a result of methodologies' influence on study findings. And once something that you must know is that this gap examine the issues with the research methodologies used in the earlier studies, and it presents a brand new research direction that divides from those research methods. And it also emphasized that it may be beneficial to use a variety of research methods, for it to work. And so, particularly if a particular study topic have been investigated using a single or a common method. So that's more about the methodological gap. And let's proceed on on the 12th slide, which is the last one, which is the population gap. Now, when it comes to the population gap, now this gap is just a common gap discovered by researchers, and we call it a population gap. There are always populations that are underserved and understudied, and this gap is the type of population-related research which populations such as gender, the race, and the age, and that is either not well represented in the evidence base or is under researched. So that's mostly just about the population gap, mostly just about the gender, race, and the age, and the evidence which is not based um, or is under researched. So we came to the this was our last slide, and I'll see you in the next video. So thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.